out to me is Steve Sarkisian. You know how we talk about Brent Venables stealing signs from trying to steal signs from everybody. Sarkisian, I don't think he had to steal signs. He just knew what was going to happen from Ohio State and called every single play that would work in his favor against everything that Ohio State did. But then also, do you really have to be such a wizard if you can? If it's so easy to match up Devontae Smith against Tough Borland and Ohio State's defense, or when you're playing four linebackers against Alabama's spread offense, and I think completely hindsight, but I said it at the time that it would be better to force Alabama to run than to throw with their Devontae Smith and John Mechie, and because as good as those guys are, they spread Ohio State's defense out, took advantage of it, and I don't know if this is a testament of how little faith Ohio State had in their secondary to actually take one guy out of there, or two guys by not going with a nickel at least much of the time against what they were doing. And so there's going to have to be some fixes there in terms of development, numbers. We know they had Cam Brown lost him at the start of the season, and they've had some recruiting misses. And so it was not a great situation, not a great matchup for the Ohio State defense. But again, without nothing they did would have been a good matchup against Alabama, because the way Alabama targeted Devontae Smith, it's like they knew Ohio State wasn't going to have an answer. And so it was easy for them. And I think that's maybe the biggest thing, is how easy it was.
I'll jump. Let Steve. Yeah. All right. I'm going.
Go ahead. Kevin.
The situation was that, Ohio State came out and played a C- game, and Alabama, I couldn't imagine they could play a much better game. An A game, and it needed to kind of be the other way around. As Tony said, when we saw a scheme that had Tough Borland trailing Devontae Smith, we knew that was going to be a bad situation. They lose Trey Sermon on the first series of the game, and while maybe that's not 100% an equivalent to Ohio State losing Ted Ginn against Florida in 2006, it certainly didn't help when you come right out and you try to use Sermon at the beginning of the game and you lose him. It wasn't a good situation. You can play what if. What if Ohio State does score on its first series and doesn't have a 3-and-out? What if, they do have Sermon? What happens if we go 7-all, 14-all, which we did, but 21-all? Ohio State keeps up the pace with Alabama at that point. And then it just comes down to being able to service breaks, and they just never were able really to do it. They ended two Alabama series without points in the first half, one of them being the Baron Browning forced fumble and recovery, and then just another one. It was a tough situation, and I think it really means that Ohio State needs to do kind of a self-evaluation on a lot of things going into this offseason. We can talk about how early enrollees into the NFL, early departures into the NFL kind of cost them, losing a couple of defensive backs who were booted out of school due to some legal issues, and maybe some recruiting misses along the way didn't really bode well for them, plus the injury to Cam Brown. But, yeah, I think there were certainly some deficiencies in terms of the personnel that they were able to trot out there for all 84 offensive plays that Alabama ran. But, at the end of the day, Sarkisian just kind of put on a masterclass with what he called, and Ohio State really could not make any adjustments that were going to work. Some great quotes from Najee Harris after the game about how Ohio State came out there and he was hurting after the game, and how they held him to 3 yards a carry or something along those lines. But when Alabama came out and said we're playing an A game and was able to execute, it was going to be a tall task.
Yeah, I would agree with everything these guys said. I think that Ohio State needed Alabama to turn it over a few times and make some mistakes to kind of help them. But in the end, it was proven Alabama has better players and they had a better scheme. And I don't think there was any doubt about that. I think Ohio State's offense, Justin Fields to me didn't seem like he was 100%. He was missing some easy throws. His guys dropped some catchable balls on him that really hurt. And man, you take Trey Sermon out of there, and the threat of running the football is gone now, basically, because Master Teague's not a home run hitter. I don't think Master Teague was 100% coming back from a concussion. Probably hadn't practiced a whole lot. So you add it all together. I mean, he had one good run out of 15, I think. The others were just kind of meh. Had a couple short touchdown runs where he bulled through some guys, which were important. But, he didn't make the difference in this game like Trey Sermon. Had he run as he had the two previous games, certainly would have. So you add it all together. It was a perfect storm. Everything went Alabama. Everything that could go Alabama's way went Alabama's way. There was no controversy involved in this, other than the over/under was 75 or 76, and it was right at 76, and they took away two apparent Ohio State touchdowns, one to Smith-Njigba and the other one to Olave. To me, the only thing I come out of this game thinking about is on this going out of bounds, getting a foot down, juggling the ball thing. I consider this to be juggling the ball. I don't consider this to be juggling. When you've got two hands on the damn thing and you're moving it around in your hands, I don't consider that to be juggling the ball. Both of those should have been touchdowns.
The Olave one, especially, that they didn't even look at it, and they called a timeout to get them to look at it, and they wouldn't. And we've seen that throughout the year. The replay officials just, I don't know, we don't work the second and the fourth quarter. They've been terrible this year on even reviewing plays. And then to not even look at that one when, I don't know what they said on TV, but you could see clearly he got his left foot down on the stadium screen, and just to not does it make a difference? No, it's just the point of it. It's supposed to be the best of the best, but clearly it wasn't for the replay officials. And then there was they had to call a timeout to get a fumble reviewed at one point because they were so desperate to stop Alabama's offense that they called a review on, I think, a Billingsley possible fumble, and of course he was down. But to have to get involved that way when every play is supposed to be reviewed, and they're asleep at the switch for much of the time, it's disappointing, but certainly not as disappointing as the Ohio State defense.
Yeah, it was the crew. I mean, I was familiar with the crew. I was. You shouldn't really know the names of the replay officials. It was actually a pretty decent replay official, one that I was aware of, but I was not understanding why they wouldn't look at it. But you get a challenge. I don't know why. You've already burned the timeout. Why don't you sit there and challenge it at that point? If you're wrong, you lose the challenge. But I mean, the touchdown we're talking about in the back of the end zone, I mean, it was just to try and maybe shrink the margin of defeat a little bit. It doesn't really matter at that point. Burn the challenge at that point. Force them to look at it, and then if they sit there and they still rule against you, at least one, you hear their thinking, and two, if it's just a ludicrous explanation, that's just more ammunition for what's wrong with the replay system. But does it mean anything in the grand scheme of things? No, it didn't mean anything in terms of the outcome of the game. It didn't mean anything really for people who were watching a certain number, if you know what I mean, in Vegas. It didn't mean anything there either, but it would have been nice. It would have been a moment to sit there and have that. It would have been nice for Fields' line, which was pretty mediocre for Fields standards, but it is what it is.
Yeah, the only thing that matters is who won the game. It's a national championship game, but yeah, for the points that Tony in particular made, this is a national championship game, and even if the score is 45-0 with 3 seconds left, let's get the calls right on the field. Now, so the Olave touchdown turned into a loss on downs, correct? The Jackson Smith catch at the pylon, what happened right after that? I can't remember.
It was the same series.
Same series.
Yeah. I mean, it was like 2-3 plays later, something like that.
All right. Yeah, so there you go, 52-31. The last hope I thought they had was after the Garrett Wilson catch. There was about 9 minutes left, 38-24, 2 touchdowns. Not that they were stopping anyone defensively, but you figured if something happens, they can get an onside kick. Of course, they're not going to get like 3 straight onside kicks. One, and then play some defense, get a turnover, do something, there was hope.
And the problem is having down your kickers. Drew Crispin, the punter, is now your kicker on kickoffs, and I'm sure he has very little experience kicking onside and the precise way that they want to do it. And do you still try? I think so, because Ohio State wasn't stopping Alabama from going 75 yards. Why would they stop them? What's the difference between 45 and 75? If Alabama recovers the kick and you can't stop them anyway, at least you had a chance. But I don't know that he had any experience kicking onside, and I don't know what you do there. Do you just try to hit one of the up men and then let all heck break loose, because you're not expecting him to get one of those precise kicks with the on the second bounce it goes up in the air, and onside kicks are so hard to recover now anyway.
Yeah, I was just going to add quickly, they really, for safety purposes, have taken most of the opportunity to get an onside kick off the table. I mean, I don't, it's such a rare occurrence to where you can make one work. You would almost have to try something like Tony suggested, of just blasting it into an up back that wouldn't probably be expecting it or whatnot, and hope to get it from there. And as Mark said, you're not going to probably be able to do that 2 or 3 times. You only fall once for the banana in the tailpipe routine.